Hey everyone, so today we're going to talk about something we haven't been on in a while, and that is just the general care and maintenance of a pair of glasses. What do you need to do to them to actually wear them and use them without bad things happening? Not much in some cases, sometimes a lot, but let's take and talk about all of that. So if you've been wearing glasses for any length of time, you have at least some clue. There's a lot of different materials glasses are made of out there. Now that does play into part as to how much actual care and maintenance is needed for the different pairs of glasses. Some need basically nothing and some need, well, there's Ferraris out there, right? They need a lot more maintenance than other things. And unfortunately in glasses, more often than not, it's the very inexpensive stuff that needs the most maintenance. I don't think we have too many Ferraris in the optical world that are just super luxurious, super expensive, and super poorly. Okay, poorly is not the right word. We all know a Ferrari is made beautifully well, but it takes a little more work to keep it that way. So yeah, there's a few of those out there, but we're not going to worry about those because they are on order of 30, 50, and 100,000, not 30, 50, 100. Those are everywhere. Now, with the metal frames, they're pretty much carefree on any end of the spectrum. The fairly inexpensive to the really expensive. For the most part, they hold their shape decently well. Some of the really cheap metals, they don't so much hold shape and they need adjusted more often. I actually was talking to somebody on YouTube here about this recently, is that the cheaper metal materials that are available out there require a lot more adjustment to stay in shape because they're gonna kind of move with time. One thing in particular is really bad for all frames is this right here, taking them on and off with one hand. You can see puts a lot of pressure right down through here, which over time causes that to slowly stretch out. See that one a lot. It's really actually one of the most common reasons we have to readjust a frame. That or falling asleep on them. One of the two. It's by far the most common. And comments, apparently getting hit with soccer balls and basketballs is one of the more common reasons to find these videos. That's one of those tidbits you don't really need to know about. But as far as the overall care, there's not a lot to do with the metal frames. They don't need any sort of oils or anything. The metal frames are just kind of there. If they need adjusted more often, they need adjusted more often. And this is kind of the way it is. Some of the materials tend to fatigue a little bit quicker with adjustments. So as they go out of adjustment, back into adjustment, out of adjustment, back into adjustment, ad nauseum, or until they break. Yeah, the metals fatigue the more they're bent. As they are bent, even you flex titanium or flex alloy or whatever the hell they're calling it these days, materials, those eyewears out there, bad news, that material fatigues and breaks just like the rest of them. The true titaniums are a lot better about it. These are going to be the Japanese titaniums, and you're talking, for the most part, I don't think I've ever seen one retailing below $300-400, and they go well beyond that as well, just depending on how much detail and attention to detail there is in the craftsmanship and design of the pieces. Those, they're practically bulletproof. You don't have to do much. Put them on, wear them. They rarely get out of adjustment. They don't need practically anything, but the other metals out there are going to fatigue. It's eventually going to break. And one of the most common ones I see is where somebody's been fit in too small of a flex frame, whatever the material. I don't care if it's titanium or some sort of cheap flex alloy, whatever. If the frame is too small, you're going to have a constant pressure right here on that middle bridge. And no matter what you do, that over time is going to cause that to very slightly, constantly flex. These will fail within a year. Every time. I've seen it time and time again. Every time you do a flex alloy of some sort, if it's fit too small, it's going to break right here within the first year. 2-3 years out, maybe it isn't a small fit issue. That can come down to wear and use, or if you take it off and bend it in half to show your friends every time you walk up to them. That might last a little more than a year, but hands down, every time it fits wrong, it's going to break sooner. It's just what happens with that material. As far as acetates, is a little dicey because there are now cheaper plastic frames out there that aren't true acetates. They're just a cheaper plastic. And there are different grades of acetates for that matter. I actually have one on my desk right now that's being a pain in the ass. It's been a fun day, and that's why we're here. Anyway, what we've got is essentially acetates. They're fairly carefree too, especially at the higher end of the spectrum. This guy I have not had to adjust a single time. I've had it 3 months, 4 months, something like that. We can go back and look at the last video I did wearing these, or the first video I did wearing these, and we'll know when I got them. It's a few months ago. Anyways, haven't had to adjust them at all. My lime green pair, you guys have seen it a million times if you've been here for long. I have had to adjust those twice. Once was yesterday. It's 3 years almost now. It's not long after I opened the shop that I got those glasses. So really, when you get into the thicker acetates like these, it does not need a lot. As long as it's a true acetate, you've got the metal core in the temple, as you can see here. Nothing too fancy on this particular piece. But then you've got that nice, solid, chunky, it's 12 millimeters at the thickest part on this one, and still 6 and 8 across the rest of the frame. So it's not a lot there to go out of shape. Now, as far as overall care on acetates, aside from adjustment and fit, now most acetates are going to need a readjustment right after you get them. As remember, I mentioned on that Amsterdam twice. Once was a few weeks after I got it because the material is going to naturally relax a little bit. So you're going to get it. It's going to open up and stretch a little. This one never did. Stubborn freaking frame here. But most out there will stretch and open up just a little bit over the first few weeks of wear. What it is, it's exposed to our body temperature all day long. It's going to relax a little bit. You readjust them after that, it's going to hold shape really good. Tune up every few months, 3 to 6 months for most frames. Some are going to hold it till it doesn't. There's some out there like that. Now, you frequent flyers, this is a little tidbit. This almost deserves its whole own video. The solid titanium frames are going to be your best friend. Most other frames are going to flex, move, and change a little bit, especially if you're traveling between countries. That's not as big of a deal these days, but I know things are starting to open back up, right? So it does matter some. And on that, the acetates, they are still a moisture-holding material. So as you fly, change elevation a lot, it's going to lose its shape a little bit. And I kind of attribute my lime green needing readjustment to that flight to Vegas. Yeah. Bite me. Okay. These didn't need readjusted. And those are the only other plastic frame I took. So there you go. So there are some acetates that don't need it, but in general, solid titanium is the best thing to take on trips. First of all, you don't have to worry about it breaking on you like the pair I mentioned earlier that is sitting over there being an absolute pain and thorn in my side. But that's enough of that one. I will stop bringing it up eventually. Now, the solid true titaniums, they're not going to flex in flight. They're not going to change based on the moisture content of the air. You're not going to go to 6% humidity and the frame's out of adjustment versus being in a 50% humidity environment. That happened, and aside from dehydrating myself. Now, that not really the big point here, but it is a useful tip. So there you go, a little nugget for you. The overall care on acetate frames, generally, until they get to be several years old, they're not going to have to worry about oxidation or the frame becoming brittle at all. Now, my lime green pair, I keep a pretty good polish on it. You know, if I wear it much, I'm polishing it back up just because that's me. I'm super particular. I want it to look like this all the time, obviously. So I don't know how long it takes that one to oxidize. I have customers that have had some of their frames for a few years. I haven't really seen it too much on those either. Now, as I mentioned, there is a range of different acetate grades out there. Some of them, I see that happen pretty quickly. I've seen some oxidize inside of 6 months. I've seen some do it in around a year. But yeah, some of the better stuff out there, it is a few years before it's really an issue. But it is something to be kind of conscious of. If you get an acetate frame, it is eventually going to need repolished, and it will eventually dry up and become extremely brittle. Now, obviously, we know there's acetate frames out there that are decades old that aren't brittle and falling apart yet. So You know, it just depends. It's a very variable thing. Just like a car, you can find a rust bucket that's 20 years old, and you can find one that looks like it just rolled off the assembly line at 20 years old. Some variance there. One of the exceptions to this is going to be the buffalo horn frames. These are extremely unusual to find these days, honestly. It's getting to be uncommon as far as a frame material. And that's because it's so finicky to work with, and many, by and large, lack the skills to work with horn frames. Just a pickier material, it's harder to work with, and that's where we're at now. So those are going to need some moisturizing every 3 to 6 months. I think is pretty well the accepted norm for the horn frames. And they do make a special kind of a nourisher to feed the material, kind of like you would wax the car in some cases. As far as overall adjustment, horn frames tend to hold it. They don't get in and out of shape easily. Sometimes getting them into shape is an absolute pain because you have to get them smoking hot practically. And an oil bath isn't bad for them either, but that's another way to re-nourish the frame as it starts to dry out. Horn frames, they're the Ferraris. There we go. That's the Ferrari I was looking for. Extremely well made, super nice frames across the board. Because honestly, people aren't working with horn that are making cheap frames. There's a few out there, but it's not common. But they're the Ferraris. They're the ones that are really nice. It's good material, but it can be super finicky to take care of. So there's that one. We found it. I knew I would find a Ferrari. I just had to talk about it first. So that's all I've got on the basic kind of maintenance and care tips. Obviously, wash your glasses at least monthly. Hopefully more often than that. Once a week is good. Clean the lenses every day or so, preferably. Because you want to be able to see, right? Yeah. As far as how to clean them, I've got a separate video on that. This has run a little longer than I intended to because I go off on tangents. It happens every time. I'm sorry. You probably hate me for it. I don't think anybody loves me for it, but anyway, it is what it is. So on that note, I will catch you guys next time because I have to run off and deal with that other pair of glasses I've mentioned 3 times in this video. I'll catch you guys next time.